All right, welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're going to be going over power creep, aka the new dungeon god rolls. So there are going to be 4 new dungeon weapons, and all of them are very strong. Definitely some you'll want to farm for coming up for the new expansion. These are going to be probably the best in slot. Primary weapons is even one very good special. And a lot of that actually has to do with its origin trait. Now, on top of that, they do have a lot of good perks, which we'll go over, but its origin trait is what really set this apart. It's called subjugation. So essentially, this is just giving every one of these weapons a 5th perk. As you see, it says to each target, shots explode. So to minors, majors, all that stuff, you just get explosive payload on the weapon. Then to strong targets, they can become exhausted. That's not like too crazy of a perk, but obviously it's decent because it plays to a lot of stuff with this specific season, and it just makes champions and all that sort just do less damage. And then for PvP, to guardians, the weapon has flint resistance, but we're not too worried about that with this video. But basically, you get explosive payload and the ability to make targets do less damage. It is one of the best origin traits in the game. It increases your damage like explosive payload. It's not just like, oh, your shots explode, can hit multiple targets. No, you do get the increased damage as well. And you can still put on 2 other perks for the weapons. So starting off, let's take a look at Unloved. This is the hand cannon. This is probably what most people are excited for. It is going to be a strand heavy burst, so it's going to be the 2 burst hand cannons. When it actually comes down to primary DPS, these are legitimately some of the highest in the game. So on its honor here, the archetype is very good. But if we take a look at its perks, it has some very good perks as well. We have Hatchling if you're playing into some sort of strand build, rapid hit, Dragonfly, and even Outlaw. And then alongside that perk calls Affinity, Elemental Honing, I guess, but this is more of like a DPS rotation perk. Kill Clip, Tear is worth noting, and then Frenzy. So you have some pretty solid perks in both columns. And what's really cool is since you have explosive payload, you kind of already have a damage perk. You can then pair that with another damage perk. And typically at this point in the game, most people don't go for reload based perks, but since the origin trait is kind of granted you another damage perk, it would be totally okay to do so. But what I would do if I was trying to get this specific role would be definitely an ad clear based perk in the first column. You have something like Dragonfly, even Hatchling's decent. I think Dragonfly is a little bit better because it can hit multiple enemies in an area. But again, if you are playing into a strand build, go Hatchling, and if you just prefer Hatchling, go Hatchling. Either will be very, very good. And then I would go with something like Frenzy, because if Frenzy does activate, which it's very easy to activate, you actually are going to get 100 handling and 100 reload speed. Since the handling and reload speed are typically very low on these types of hand cannons, this is just going to do wonders. I mean, it literally maxes out to 100 handling, 100 reload. You're going to get an ad clear perk, and on top of that, you do have basically explosive payload with the origin trait. So you have a juiced stat hand cannon, you have Dragonfly for ad clear, and you have a very, very good damage perk alongside pairing with the damage that Frenzy does give. Now, this isn't the only way you can craft it. This is just the way I would. Again, if you want to go with some sort of reload perk, you could take Paracal's Affinity, because Paracal's Affinity is extremely easy to proc. You get a 20% damage increase, which is a little higher than Frenzy, but do remember you are missing out on the stat boost. But if you take something like Rapid Hit, you will get some stat increases there, or even if you take Outlaw, you will also get a huge bump to your reload speed alongside a reload multiplier, so you reload it very quickly. But again, overall, I think the best way to craft this is sure going to be Dragonfly Frenzy. Again, with all that active, you enhance everything. It even has armor piercing rounds, so you can do more damage to shields. It's only 5%, but it is a nice little benefit to have. I probably would throw an Arrowhead Break in here just to get 100 recoil direction, and then maybe just throw on a range master work. You could go with stability if you want some more stability, but this right here, in my opinion, is probably going to be one of, if not the best primary hand cannon in the game. It can get darkness energy if you're playing into Transcendence. You can run something like Velocity Baton to get your light energy up. It does a ton of damage. It has great ad clear, great stats, and it even has access to the armor piercing to do more damage to shields. It is disgusting. This is for sure going to power creep pretty much every other hand cannon. The only one that probably compete is something like Midnight Coup or Fatebringer with explosive payload 1 for all. But even with that, this again already has explosive payload for the origin trait, but you also get Firefly and Frenzy. So it's very, very good. Tell me how you want to craft this in the comments below, but this is for sure the role I'm looking out for. But next up, we have Unworthy. We're really going for a lot of depressing names here, but we have, this is going to be a rapid fire frame. It's going to be an arc rapid fire scout rifle, so it's a 260 round per minute. Pretty good in PvE. I know a lot of people really love Randy Star Knife, even Trusty's also included in there, and this is just going to be just like one of those. But in its first column, you do have things like Rapid Hit, the newly buffed Ambitious Assassin, Firefly, and even Rewind rounds. In the next column, you have Rolling Storm, which is a new perk playing into Bolt Charge. Frenzy is always a decent perk. Pair Calls Affinity again. Precision Instrument, and then Volt Shot. So right off the bat, to me, in my opinion, I'm going to be probably using this for some sort of arc build, but even if you aren't, you do have access again to things like Paracall's Affinity, just get a 20% damage decrease. If you want to go with Frenzy, again, you get max handling, max reload out, plus a 15% damage decrease. I think overall Frenzy probably is the better perk than Paracall's Affinity if you are just going for a straight damage perk. Again, a reminder with the Order trait, you are getting explosive payload as well. If you want to go Paracall's Affinity with rapid hit, because you'll be able to stack it up extremely quick on the scout rifle, you could do that. But again, I probably would just still go with Frenzy, and then you could pair that with pretty much anything else that you would like to. You could go rewind rounds, just so you can constantly just never have to reload the gun. You could pair rewind with the precision instrument, and you could have this like pseudo kind of single target damage thing where you just stack up your damage with precision hits, never have to reload. That could be good. But the way I'm probably going to craft it is sure going to be Firefly, because with Firefly, if you do get a precision kill, not only do you get the explosion, but you also get 50 reload speed. And then I'm probably going to pair this with Volt Shot, because when you reload after a kill, you're going to be able to jolt targets. This, for an arc build, is going to be disgusting. You get that added clear with Firefly, and the really interesting thing is that Firefly does do solar damage, so this scout rifle is kind of doing two forms of damage between solar and arc. You get the AoE with solar, you get the AoE with arc, and then again, you have explosive payload and also the ability to weaken higher health targets. I think this is for sure going to be my go-to crafting option. Again, you also do have armor piercing rounds for that increased damage to shields. But if you just want to go a pure damage route, you can definitely not go wrong with something like Firefly Paracall's Affinity. You get the explosion, you get the big damage increase, you get the reload speed. So Frenzy may be not as important on this weapon to something like the hand cannon, because again, you're at 85 reload, you're at 5% more damage with Paracausal. It can do some crazy things. Even if you're playing into Bolt Charge, I mean, you have Rolling Storm. This perk doesn't seem that necessary with most Bolt Charge builds in the game, at least with this current season going on. But if that's something you're into and you can really build around it, that's also an option. But again, I'm probably going to go Volt Shot Firefly, but Firefly Paracall's Affinity, if you don't want to play it into any arc specific build, is also just going to be a great option. Again, reload speed, a bunch of damage, you're going to be good to go. If you want to go something for like Rewind Precision Instrument, again, for some single target damage, that is also very, very solid. And I know these videos are particularly for PvE, but it even has good PvP perks. I mean, you have Zen Moment. I know the keep away Precision Instrument roll probably is also something disgusting. And even like the hand cannon over here, you also have some pretty interesting rolls with Closing Time. You can pair that with rapid hit. There's a bunch of cool things you can do with both of these weapons for both PvE and PvP. But again, I'm going to be going Firefly Volt Shot on this one for sure. With the Origin trait, it is going to be disgusting. It will probably be my new go-to arc weapon. I usually use non-denouement, but with this, I might actually swap over to use this one. Now, next up is the Unsworn. This is going to be a strand adaptive trace rifle. Now, trace rifles, they're okay, they got buffed. Obviously, with something like Cenotaph, you want a decent trace rifle to be able to mark targets, and this seems like it potentially could be the best one. It has some very interesting perks here, some very good utility-based perks, and even if some sort of trace rifle becomes DPS meta, I don't think that will ever happen. This is probably going to be a good contender. So in the first column, you do have something like Tear, just for a utility-based thing. Stats are all decent. Rewind, Subsistence, Shoot to Loot. I guess I will leave their Thresh in there as well. But next up is Hatchling, Detonator Beam, Elemental Honing if you're doing, you know, some swap stuff, but I don't particularly think you need that. Bait and Switch, Target Lock, and Kill and Tally. Like, all these are just pretty solid perks for a trace rifle, for both just using it and just for pure Cenotaph utility. So first off, with Tear, you can get precision final blows and make targets become severed. That's very good for utility. If you are just using it for Cenotaph, you can just every now and then get a headshot kill, and now everything's going to be severed around you, so they do less damage to you. You're using it for just damage, and add clear, stats are all good. Rewind for some single target damage. You can pair this with something like Bait and Switch, and you basically will never have to reload. Again, if you want to pair this with Elemental Honing, you could do so as well. Even with Detonator Beam, which is the new perk, which is super interesting. So when you deal sustained damage, it'll make an explosion. Depending on how often this procs and how much damage it does, this could potentially be better than both of them. You can literally just keep shooting and constantly make explosions over and over again. I can see that potentially being very, very good. But again, you also have subsistence, which, you know, just again, kind of like stats for all, just slaying out. But then you have shoot to loot. So shoot to loot for Cenotaph specifically is very, very good. You pretty much want this on every single trace rifle you use with Cenotaph, because you can pick up all the ammo that you are making, which is very strong. But you can then pair that with a bunch of other good perks. Detonator beam right here. Again, you could just now actually do some damage with Cenotaph. You mark a boss, you can actually take a chunk out of it. You may want to be a little careful with that though, because you don't want to accidentally get the kill, because you want your teammates to get the kill for Cenotaph to work. So Detonator beam may not be the best option specifically for Cenotaph, but if your team can play around it, it will be very good. You also have target lock. If you just don't sustain damage, you could just obviously take it off when it's about to get the kill. For me personally, I'm probably gonna go with something like a rewind and detonator beam, because that just sounds very, very fun. Again, alongside that, with the orchard trait, you're also causing explosions or lowering a boss's damage. But for utility-based purposes, I'm for sure going to go with shoot to loot. I probably would just go with detonator beam to cause explosions, so I can clear stuff, you know, actually make the trace rifle pretty useful. Again, you have the explosive rounds, and if you're marking a boss with this, you're also making it do less damage, or just any other high health target to mark a Cenotaph. This is going to be a very, very solid Cenotaph option. And again, potential DPS, but I don't think that's, you know, maybe at some season if trace rifles ever become the DPS meta, you might want to rewind round with, you know, bait and switch or detonator beam, or even elemental honey. It could be pretty good. This is definitely the, I guess, least desirable one out of the three, but for all the warlock users out there, rejoice, because there is a new option for Cenotaph. But finally, we have Unvoiced. This is going to be a pinpoint slug frame shotgun. It is void, and it has some very interesting perks. Now, slug shotguns have been pretty decent like this whole time. Obviously, we've had the double slug meta and everything. They never kind of went under until obviously double slug just went away. But even then, they're still just good single target damage weapons. If you need to do some extra boss damage, it's really easy to hit a precision shot. You're up close. They're still pretty solid. So in this first column, we have destabilizing rounds, 4 times the charm, envious arsenal, and redirection, which is an extremely interesting perk. In the second column, we have demoralize, bait and switch, vorpal weapon, frenzy, and elemental honing. So a couple different ways you could build it here. You could just go for straight clear, take something like destabilizing rounds and frenzy. Again, you're going to get that max reload, max handling. You're causing everything to become volatile. It could be good, but we're not really using slug shotguns for clear, if we're being completely honest. You could go for a DPS swap route with something like envious bait and switch, which is probably going to be the go-to for most people. You can just unload the whole magazine, reload it when you're doing damage to something else. This is going to be very solid. If double slug was in the meta again, this combination would just go absolutely crazy. But you can even pair this with elemental honing if you're more of a fan of that. Bait and switch just being a little easier to proc. But you could also just go for I want to unload the whole magazine route. You go 4 times the charm. You're going to constantly proc this over and over again. Pair that with something like vorpal or even frenzy, and you're going to get 15% more damage, and you could just keep shooting constantly over and over and over again. Probably the way I'm going to go is just envious arsenal and bait and switch, just for some sort of DPS rotation. But 2 point out is redirection. So the way this perks work, if you damage rank of alpha combatants, you'll actually gain stacks up to a maximum of 30. And every single stack, you actually get 33% increased damage to elite or higher combatants. So just think, okay, you're getting 33% more damage to bosses, and you can get 30 stacks of this. So if you could somehow manage to build 30 stacks before you go into a boss fight, that is 33% increased damage on top of another damage perk over here, depending on whatever one you want to take. Again, all 4 of these would be decent in this specific situation. But since you do have to build stacks, maybe take something like Frenzy again to get that reload speed up would be nice. But Bait and Switch obviously is going to net you the most damage. 33% here, 30% here. You're going to be able just to do a ton of damage whenever you go to shoot a boss over and over again with these stacks maxed up and the timer for this. It could be pretty good. But also a perk 2 point out is also demoralize. So precision round blows, when you make enemies around you become weakened. This is more, I guess, like a utility clear perk. You compare that with destabilizing rounds. I don't think this is what most people are going to do, but you do also have the origin trait, so you get, you know, the explosive shot on the weaker target. So it's going to be really easy to kill the weaker targets. But again, most people I think are going to go for envious, bait and switch, or elemental honing. You're going to be able to sever the target, or exhaust the target, not sever the target. Sorry, make it do less damage. you could just never have to reload the gun. You get a bunch of damage. Make sure you pair assault mag with this, because this will increase the rounds per minute for a little bit. And just like the previous two, this also has good PvP perks. I mean, you have Lone Wolf and where was it at, Closing Time, which I'm pretty sure is just the go-to for mostly shotguns and PvP now. Very a lot of options. And then for the Trace Rifle, I mean, you have Target Lock for PvP, and honestly, that's about it. Maybe Thresh or Tear. I can see something here. This is more of a utility weapon. But for the other three, good PvP perks, great PvE perks, and I genuinely believe these are going to just be mostly the go-to meta at this point. Maybe not the special weapons. I could see the Trace Rifle for Synod to have, but for the Scout and the Hand Cannon, specifically the Hand Cannon, this is what most people are going to be chasing. It is for sure going to be probably the best one in the game, and I would definitely farm this out if you can. But anyway, though, that is all for the brand new Dungeon God rolls. Let me know the ones that you're chasing after the most, what specific rolls you want. I'm very excited for the Hand Cannon. Honestly, I'm very excited for all of them. Obviously, with the Hand Cannon, taking the top up there. But again, let me know what you all like in the comments down below. I want to thank you all so much for watching this one, and I hope you all have a great day. Peace.